Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Five Drinks at Midnight. In the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, so we try to wrap up before midnight. Today we got a special one. Daniel Whittington, just overall rock star. If you don't know who he is, like and subscribe. This is going to be a good one. Let's get started. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Five drinks at midnight, five drinks, five questions, midnight, whatever comes first. Again, thank you, huge fan. Thank you so much for taking time out of the day. I know you guys are really busy. Bastards Ball's coming up this weekend. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Again, just for folks at home that don't know who you are, which I find if you're in the whiskey community rather impossible, but you are the Chancellor of the Wizard Academy, founder of the Whiskey Marketing School, co-founder of Crowded Barrel Whiskey Company, founding member of the Texas Whiskey Association, and president, co-host of the top two whiskey YouTube channels, the Whiskey Tribe and the Whiskey Vaults. Jeez, sorry. So,
That's a mouthful, man. I can't believe you're doing it.
I'm so excited, huge fan, so I'm really excited. And the number one job title, dad. So again, really freaking excited. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess the first question is, what are we drinking first?
Well, we're going to start with the first whiskey I ever really drank. And here's the irony. Are you ready for this? My whiskey selection at my house is pretty meager, other than really weird shit.
All right.
Right? That like is, there's no way it's accessible. So I gave you some whiskeys that are like really accessible. And then I left for work this morning and realized I don't own most of them. So I had to go stop by the vault and pour some samples to bring back home. And here's how bad it is. The first one is Jameson. And I don't even have it. I had to go to the vault and pour myself a Jameson in a sample glass, which for shame.
Well, I was pulling my JMO off the shelf, and I ended up dropping and breaking it. So I'm going with the triple.
Oh no! Okay, good.
At
least
least
had that one. Is it good?
It's pretty good. We can send you some samples.
Yeah. For a second, I thought that was because of the color. I thought that was like that Jameson orange thing they released, which is like a total travesty.
Yes, yeah. I do have a bottle of that too. But
oh my god, what is that? Yeah.
All right. Well, why JMO?
Well, so because it was easy. It's everywhere, right? And so when I started out, I was playing some questionable locations. And no matter where you went, they might have the shittiest whiskey in the bar. They have J&B as their well, or they might have, right?
Yeah.
But they're also going to have Jameson, just period. And it's like Starbucks coffee. It's not going to change anyone's world, but you know exactly what you're getting. And sometimes you just want a black coffee.
Yeah.
And you're willing to deal with the burnt, beans.
Yeah.
So for me, for Jameson, and I still like it. A lot of people drink Jameson. It's like, oh, it's so harsh and so, it's boring. But I still like Jameson. It is perfect for what it is.
Yeah. Again, I think, you are absolutely right. It is, what you're getting. There's no, it's a good, safe whiskey. So
yeah.
All right. Well,
and
cheers.
Cheers to you, sir.
Cheers.
It's also a lower proof, and so you can sip on it throughout the night and not get trashed while you're playing. That's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that almost leads us into, question one, which is a little bit of an origin story. But I mean, you were a rock star for 18 years.
Oh, go ahead.
How does one get into the whiskey world / community?
Oh man, backwards. Ass backwards. Thanks to the generosity of random human beings. Um, so here's the irony. I spent 18 years making a decent living, but not becoming a rock star. Like I spent 18 years trying to even get like a fraction of the notoriety that I've gotten from the whiskey YouTube community. It's so ironic. Just like now I'll get recognized in the grocery store, or I'll get recognized walking down random towns or popping into a, but like 18 years as a musician just fighting that battle, and I was like, not once was I ever recognized in my whole life as a musician, not a single time.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to. I mean, there are many different forms of rock star, but I mean, if you can play music in front of a crowd, you're a rock star.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, you are one step on me. I cannot play any type of music. So like,
Yeah. Well, we did play some pretty cool gigs. I mean, we got to open for Aerosmith. That was probably the biggest show we ever played.
Fucking rock star. So,
but we weren't like, in Aerosmith's band or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was long career of music while doing a bunch of other things at the same time, as all musicians in that lower middle class to middle class range do. But slowly developing a love and appreciation of various whiskeys. And so by the time I decided to back out of touring, and I stumbled into Wizard Academy, which is the business school that I'm the chancellor of, I was already pretty well versed in whiskey at probably the level of most of our real whiskey nerds in our community. Not like, the Eric Waite categories of like super nerds, or like the Roy and Alcavite, right? But like the normal ones.
Sure.
Like your categories, and your trivia, and you sort of know how to order things, and if you like something, how to find it again, in another distillery, and what all the terms mean, and I felt pretty confident. And then I really, because I'm a nerd, really started studying things. And I had done a little bit of tiptoeing into the wine somm program in California when I lived there, and realized that I didn't like wine as much as the wine guys did, which was, that's why I didn't belong. Not because they're doing the wrong thing, but because it was like, oh, whoa, I'm in the wrong room. I went through the wrong door. And I mean, I like wine, but these guys love wine. And so I sort of backed out of that. But I remembered some of the lessons I was taught in that, and really fell in love with the deductive tasting side of that.
Okay.
And then I got into the marketing school, and I basically did like because I got there in 2013. We didn't start the whiskey school until 2.5 years later. And that 2.5 years for me was like a master's program in effective marketing communications. And right before I started the school, I realized, what's missing in the whiskey space is not people teaching you a lot of whiskey knowledge. There's plenty of things like that, but there's almost no one talking about how to communicate, how to tell stories, how to shepherd the journey of whiskey for other people, the kind of things that natural wine sommeliers do intuitively, but not all of them, And so we decided we're going to do that. We're going to teach people. We're going to be the program that, yes, you learn the fundamentals, and yes, you definitely learn all the facts and the production and all that kind of stuff. But we spend a lot more time on marketing communications and language communications and how the brain works and things like that. Okay. And so that's how I stumbled into the whiskey as an industry. I wasn't even distilling at the time. I'm just an educator. That's my first love, even as a musician, as educator. I love teaching.
Okay.
If I could lose the distillery or lose any other part of the whiskey business, but retain education, that would be the thing that I care most about. And that's how I got into it. Okay. So that was before the distillery. That was before the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Awesome. And then, so like, is it true that the YouTube channel really kind of started on just as it being an experiment from you and Rex? Like,
Yeah, well, actually, it's an experiment by me that Rex got involved in, and then it really took off.
Okay.
It was partially by blind luck, and I feel like I've told this story before, but I started it to be a resource for the sommeliers to say, here's how you can talk about whiskey without being a pretentious asshole.
Awesome.
And that was all I was going to do. I was just going to sit in front of the camera and be like, here's how you talk about whiskey. And in order to like be accessible and get the gateway, because we were trying to talk to the newcomers to whiskey, not to the snobs or the nerds or even the really educated whiskey drinkers. We were trying to talk to people who were like interested, thought they might like it, maybe even know they like it, but didn't know what to do next and didn't know, had that fear of failure or fear of making mistakes and just accessibility.
Okay.
And so that's what I started doing. The people started showing up, and that we started talking to them in the comments, and it became this little like fun little absurd community. There was a lot of shit talking about the medallion, which we thought was hilarious.
Yep.
Because that's literally the point of the medallion, is to be absurd. And so that was really fun. And then one day, who were they? The online whiskey sales website that no longer sells in the US but used to.
Masters of Malt.
Yep, thank you.
Out of the UK.
Masters of Malt released an advent calendar. I think it was the second year they had done it, or it was early on anyway.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, thank God, because all people like you and I are ever looking for is content.
Yep.
That's it. Everything else is easy, but coming up with good content is terrifying and exhausting.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, thank God, 25 days of no-brainer content. I could just follow the advent calendar. And so we batch shot these. And the first day we released on December 1st, it turns out it was a whiskey that had never been released before, that was only bottled for the advent calendar. And so when you searched it online, there were two results: Master of Malt and our YouTube video, and no other internet results.
Oh,
none. And so overnight, we went from hundreds of subscribers to thousands of subscribers in like 48 hours.
That's awesome.
I think we went from under 1,000 to over 3,000 in a few days. And it was almost entirely, if not entirely, because everyone around the world opened their advent calendar and went, what the hell is this? And then Googled it, and then our video was it. So we just lucked out. But because we're marketers and communicators, we know what to do with that. And so then we started building the channel on purpose, with intention and direction and roles and show notes, and like we really started investing in it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate I mean, again, I love the show. I've now gotten to the point of it's a Saturday morning ritual for me. I will watch the Tribe channel first, just because I love the shenanigans and the tomfoolery, right. and then I'll go back and watch the week, and then so like
it's like Saturday morning cartoons. You
exactly.
With G.I. Joe, you end with He-Man.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole, like, again, now with you guys having your own distillery on campus and everything, like, it's just like the experiments, like even the Will Oreos distill is hilarious. And then your face, dude. Like, I feel bad for you because like they use you now, like you're like the punching bag test dummy, and I really like.
The funny thing about those Oreos is we decided that we wanted to start selling that in the tasting room, not by the bottle, but just like, hey, if you saw the episode and you want to see what it tastes like in real life, you got to try this shit. But the only way you can do that, and I've got a little mosquito thing I'm going to turn on over here because it's starting to come out. The only way you can do that legally is if you file a label application, right?
Yep.
And so you have to go through all of the legal label applications, even if all you're going to do is put it in the tasting room and pour it by the glass until it's gone. And even if you only ever made one bottle, So we
Yeah.
filed a formula application because it's not a whiskey. It's not. There's no category for this. It's
Right.
just we turned something into alcohol that wasn't supposed to be, and we sent it in. Our lawyer sent it in, and she just emailed me an hour ago. TTB, the feds sent it back saying pending further review, or in their words, will Oreos distill?
I thought for sure Oreo would have a huge problem with it. So like that would be.
Well, there's a chance that we can't use Oreo.
Right.
I honestly don't know. But the thing is, we're never going to sell it in the retail, and we're never going to promote it. Really, it's going to be one bottle. So even if Oreo was like cease and desist, we'll be like, okay,
Yeah,
that's the last of it.
Done.
Yeah.
Bottle kill. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, I mean, again, you guys have massive events, so like,
Yeah.
thousands of people show up. I bet that one bottle is going to go very, very quickly. So, yeah. Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
So my drink for this one was the first time I really decided peaty Scotch was for me, and it was originally going to be the Port Charlotte, but what I found with the Lottie, which quickly turned into my favorite one, was I loved the whole distillery. And so I switched our drink to the Lottie. So even though the Port Charlotte turned me on to peat and the Lottie is unpeated, which is why that story combination is so weird, I didn't want to start with peat and blow out my palate for the other 5.
Yeah, good plan.
Although, honestly, if I'm ruining it with this, but who cares?
Yeah.
So the Brook Lottie, son of a bitch, that's a good pour. It's got all the malty heft and weight and a little bit of the spice and pepper from the barrel impact, but it's just fruit bomb and yeah, so good.
It's damn good. So cheers to you, sir.
Cheers to you. Here's to us and them that's like us. Damn few, mare's the pity, and they're dead. All right. That's
so
that's the good
question 2. You kind of talked a little bit about it. First question, but what is a whiskey somm, and can people really become a whiskey somm, since whiskey is considered individual tastes are built towards individuals, I guess is the.
Well, okay, so first, yes, they can. Honestly, there's nothing stopping anybody from calling themselves a whiskey somm. You can do it right now if you like. You can add it to your profile. I don't really care. The school doesn't really care. We're not going to police that. It's fine. Our people, it's a title that we bestow on the graduates of our program, and we know who our graduates are, and that's something that you can check out, right? Now we're never gonna police that, partially because sommelier as a term is not owned by anybody, including the wine somms. Now, historically and traditionally, it comes from the wine industry, and it dates all the way back to early French. And the shortest version, and total sloppy, is it's just the wine butler, right? It's like, it wasn't a prestigious title originally. It was just a dude in charge of the wine, the same way the chauffeur is in charge of the cars, right? And then it grew it grew as access to wine and storage of wine became more feasible. And so that single places could not just have the barrel they had, but have options, right? And then the person who knew that became a very valued person. And at the time, everything, there was no formal education system, right? So everything was apprenticing. So you did something, you hired somebody, you trained them, taught them everything you know. You waited until you thought they did as good or better than you. They became in charge, and that was the whole program. And then it built into, hey, we should have a formal thing where all the people who know this shit formally train people with this in mind. And that's the origins of the wine somm program. When we started the school, we were looking for a term to denote beverage expert in a category. And we spent about a month trying to figure out what we wanted to call our whiskey graduates. And it was, you got all these people like digital mavens and right,
Yeah.
And so we played around with, man, I think at one point there were over 30 things on the list. Whiskey this and whiskey that. But after about a month, I realized, wait a minute. Any term we use, we're going to have to explain, right? And here's how the conversation is going to go. We're whiskey warriors. Okay, well, what's a whiskey warrior? Well, it's like a sommelier, but for whiskey. Oh, okay. Okay. So as a marketer,
Yep.
why have that conversation?
Yep.
Let's just skip to the end. And so I went and looked it up to make sure we weren't infringing on any copyrights, and we're not. And so I was like, fine, we're just going to call them whiskey sommeliers, because then I don't have to have that conversation, because there's a general understanding that sommelier means expert.
There you go.
And that's it. So I Googled it, and there were chocolate sommeliers and water sommeliers, and like it had already broken the bounds of wine. And I was like, all right, fuck it, we're going to use that.
Yeah. No,
and that was it.
That's kind of where I was getting with, because you have talked about this before on the channel, and then also in other interviews, and I mean, because again, I think you also answered it in the first question. You just wanted to find a cool way not to sound like a dick and how to talk about whiskey. So like that,
right.
That's rule number one of the internet is don't be a dick. So like I think that's and again, when you talked about a bunch of interviews that we did when we were doing our research, I mean, social stalking, you talked about how it was a somm means expert, so therefore to be a whiskey expert, there you go. And it's, I think people have such a somm is like, that dude that comes out and he's fully like, but he's got the towel over the arm, and he wipes the bottle after every pour, and he just like one of those guys. And I could taste the fire that happened in 1843 in this grape, and you're like, what?
Oh, I don't like this one. It smells like the middle class.
Yes, terrible. Yes. So I mean, I guess that's where I was going with that question. And to be somm means expert, so being a whiskey expert. So
and expert is we chose a path, a very specific path of education, and it left out things that we think are better done by other people. So we'll never teach distillation, because Moonshine U does an amazing job of that. They don't need us, right? We don't need to add another one. And then, we won't only focus on the truly in-depth grain to final product diploma of the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy on Scotch, because they're doing that, right? And so we're not going to teach you brewing and yeast and ferment, because, Harriet Watts and Institute of Brewing and Distilling, they're all doing that. So we don't need another school doing those things. We are the arm, I feel, in the industry, the communications arm of these things, right? And so we co-opted sommelier, and the only rub is, and this I agree, is the way that the wine guys use it is closer to the way people are thinking of, EWA and Harriet Watt and these kinds of formal education programs. And so I get that there's like a disconnect on, like, we're using a term, but we're sort of bending it, and that's fair. Okay. I always think that there's no we do ourselves a disservice by only going after critics instead of hearing critics. No, I'm not going to let it change what I'm doing necessarily. But I
hear you.
Yes, we have
to fuck yourself.
Yeah. Not all of them, but yeah. Yeah. So, and that's most of the conflict. I always have a theory that often big disagreements come down to a different definition of the same word. And you find out that you actually kind of all agree, but when you're using words, they have meanings differently with different people. And so we definitely co-opted a word that has certain meanings in certain corners, and we're going to rewrite that one. And the reason for me was my favorite wine somms are the ones who are shepherds and storytellers and bring you into the wine journey. And it's not about them, and it's not about ego, and it's not about proving their knowledge, and it's about you and drawing you down this journey. And that's not really taught specifically in the wine program, but I think it makes the best wine somms.
No,
And so I wanted to go after the thing that I thought made the best sommelier and focus on that.
awesome. Who do you like? Who should be taking that class then? Is it like brand ambassadors? Is it every
Yeah,
CEO like
yeah.
me, or like I mean,
If
who?
your job is whiskey storytelling, then you're welcome.
All right.
You're welcome to come. You'll benefit. In any way. So when people come to us when they're starting a distillery and they say, I want to take the whiskey program because I'm starting a new distillery. And I immediately say, no, go to Moonshine U or go to these other programs, go to IDB, go to Harry Watt, learn the science, learn the shit, be open for a year, decide you still want to do it. then you come to us and we'll teach you how to make money.
Yeah. Come back after 3 years when you're actually bottling whiskey instead of wondering.
Or now reps and things like that, hell yeah, all day long, because their entire job is storytelling. And we are literally designed for that. So yeah, I think our graduates tend to be, they run the gamut from distillery owners to workers in a distillery to bar owners or managers or operators to brand ambassadors and brand reps to just sheer enthusiasts.
Okay.
I mean, we regularly, or not regularly, but at least one person per class is like, I just really like whiskey and this sounded cool, right?
Cool.
But usually when we're done with the program, they're like, I wonder if I could do some of these things to make money from what I know.
There you
They're
go.
like, yes, you can actually.
Yes, you can. Sounds amazing. So,
well, okay, and here's something. Man, we haven't talked about this at all, but I've signed all the contracts. So I've been, one of the things that I wanted most of all was to begin to tie together all the education programs into a community, or at least have them all talking to each other like they're a community, because we are. And when you talk to each other, you find out we all care about the same things.
Yeah.
We all care about education and, knowledgeable people furthering the cause of this category. And so I've been working really hard at pulling people into Wizard Academy as another location for their programs. And so we are formally going to be doing the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy certificates at Wizard Academy.
Oh, fuck. Wow. All right. Awesome.
Not the diploma yet, but we all doing the certificates, and we'll do it for all the ones they allow. We haven't announced the class yet, but we just finished that relationship building and all the stuff. And there's another partnership that I'll announce once it's actually formalized. I mean, everything's done, but once we're ready.
Yeah.
And that's a big one for us too. And it's really just my attempt to be, the legacy of this should be building community, not building walls. And so that's going to be, it's going to be really cool.
That's awesome. Congratulations, early community.
Yeah.
So cheers to you on that. So this is fucking awesome, by the way. This is so good.
Right.
You can't go wrong with this. This is.
Oh, you want to talk? Oh, here's a little insider one. You want to talk early YouTube whiskey flubs? So here's one of my favorites. Now, most of the time, if it's like a mispronunciation or shit like that, it's me just not giving a fuck and sort of knowing that that's going to just
Piss
freak
people
out
off.
the comments. Yeah, just blow up. That's not how you pronounce Isla. But my favorite early memory has to do with Bilotti on the channel. And that was Brushwood came over and he was like, I want to shoot a whiskey episode in the channel. And I was like, okay. So I built this tour of whiskeys and I had all my notes written, and I'm a deep introvert. And so when the camera turns on, I'm not really actively paying attention. I'm operating off like an internal script and dialogue most of the time, right? It's easier with Rex because we can just have a conversation and improv shit. But when I'm with strangers, I'm having to think about them and think about and so right before we turned on the cameras, we switched the Port Charlotte with the laddie because I was running out of the Port Charlotte, and so I'm like, fuck it, we'll do the laddie. It's the same distillery. But we hit go, and I poured the laddie, and I gave the notes in my head that I'd written for Port Charlotte. Not all of them, but like some. And here's how not there I was present entirely. It wasn't until they released the final episode and I watched it that I was like, oh, no, the laddie has no peat. What? What's happening? And then the first thing that happened in the comments was like, this laddie has no peat. What are you, this guy's? And I was like, oh, there's no correcting that. That's forever. Welcome to YouTube. I actually had a bottle of this one.
All right.
We're going to switch to Balcones single malt. Now, this one, I might add some water because this is a barrel pick, and it's 65%.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is no fucking joke. But this was my first realization that good whiskey could be made down the street from me. And that was a big one. And what happened was a friend of my family, a really good friend of ours, drove through, who's a whiskey fanatic and loves whiskey, invited my dad over. And we got over and he was like, hey, I was driving through Waco and they have a whiskey distillery. And so I bought one of everything they had and we're going to try them all. And this was like the second year that Balcones was open. And so it was Baby Blue, Brimstone, Rumble, I think, and the single malt. I'm guessing, but I think that's what I remember. I know single malt was in there. And we tried them all. And I tried that single malt, and it was like an 18-month-old 5-gallon barrel single malt. And I was like, holy crap, this is actually really great. And I'm from Waco. And so I was ready to be like, come on, Waco, really? Yeah, really? But man, did they catch me off guard. And they've only gotten better every single year. They are one of the most consistently improving distilleries I've ever encountered.
Awesome.
When did you find Balcones for the first time?
Maybe about 2.5 years ago.
Okay. Like at a bar, or you saw it in the store?
A friend brought it up from Texas.
Oh, okay. They're like, hey, check this shit out.
Yeah, like
Were you skeptical?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this actually almost ties perfectly into, question 3, which is, I mean, now, like with you guys, first of all, cheers, because
yeah, cheers
like that. Oh yeah, yeah. Like you can't. Like he brings up a bottle every. Like he's coming up. He's going to be here next Wednesday. He's actually going to be for you guys on Saturday. So otherwise he would have been here on Sunday. But yeah, he's coming in. Go. But which I'm gonna definitely have to make a trip to Texas to come and visit. But with you guys now jumping into the craft distillery world, has it changed your point of view on taste? Like you guys taste everything, so it has like jumping into the whiskey making craft distillery world, man. Like changed your point of view on Texas whiskey for
it's not changed my view on Texas whiskey, but it's changed everything about how I taste and what I taste and how I market. And what it did was it's given me an entire language and depth with which to realize where the things I was tasting are coming from and allowing me to go even further into that. So before I would have described early days, maybe pull the malt. Sorry.
Nope.
Ears.
Yep.
I might have pulled the malt and just said, "Oh, it's fruity," right? Well, now as I'm starting, and I knew through studying, that shows up in fermentations, and it's one thing to read that shit. It's another to do a fermentation and drink the beer, the 7, 8, 9%, and be like, "Oh my God, it's all there." And then to go back 2 years later and be like, and discover what made it and what didn't and what changed, and it's so magical. And And my favorite thing is that now when I pour a whiskey, my brain returns to process, right? Before, when I poured a whiskey, my brain went to the tasting wheels
Sure.
and the books, right? But now my brain goes into process too. And that's been really exciting for me because I'm a dork.
Oh,
But it's opened up this whole world of like, I can smell and I go, I know what part of that is grain. I know what part of that is from fermentation and yeast. I know what part of that made it through all the way through the cuts, and I know which part of that the barrel didn't touch and did, and that's been, it's sort of like, I don't know. I don't. It's like the closest thing for me was the first time someone showed me a delay pedal on guitar. And all of a sudden I realized what the Edge was doing and why I couldn't do it at home. Like all these like echoey tones and all this, and I'm sitting there with my guitar. I'm like, I can't get that. What is he doing? He must just have really, really fast fingers. But I'm like in high school, and I'm like, what is going on? And then someone's like, a delay pedal, and I'm like, chink, chicka, 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 chicka. I'm like, oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's freaking awesome, because I hate when everybody says once you've seen one distillery, you've seen them all, because that's not true. Like everybody, sure, there's the natural, like there is the process, but yeah, there's still, everybody's doing the thing that is
the thing that and that's when you get really weird science in these distilleries. I think that's fun. I think I would addend the people who said once you've seen one distillery, you've seen them all, to once you've seen one distillery tour, you've seen them all.
Sure.
To really get to see all the distilleries, you have to get behind the tour guide to the guy who's making shit in the fermenting room. And then you hear how their theories are being used differently to apply to things than the distillery down the road's theories are being used to apply to something. And then you get a lot of diversion and uniqueness. But the tour always talks about, let's explain how malt works, and here's how fermentation, and they're all almost all the same.
Do you think that craft whiskey will expand to allow for there being more regions? Like, for example, a more classification, if you will, that there will be like Texas whiskey and, Wisconsin whiskey, New York rye kind of thing. Do you think that we'll get to that point, or is whiskey just going to always be craft whiskey?
Man, that's speculative. I think, here's what I think, raw opinion. I think that's two different answers. So I think one, we're not even close to maxing out the craft distilling industry. And I think,
well, here, how about this? Since that's a real general question, would you rather be considered Texas whiskey or craft whiskey?
Oh, well, Texan, because we're in Texas.
Right.
But what I was going to say in part B was, the reason you can have regions in Scotland is because, like a science experiment, so much of the process is the same. And so you can sort of distinguish the regional accents because the first half of the process, or 3/4 of the process, is virtually indistinguishable with small changes, right? And so that really does give you regional accent. Like any good science experiment, they've limited the variables. American craft, there are no rules. And so there are no consistent variables. Just because you happen to live in Texas doesn't mean that we have a consistent list of variables that Texans follow. So do I think there will be regions in America like Scotland? No, never. Do I think there will be enough distilleries in each area of the US to build their own little guilds? 100%, absolutely.
Right.
And I think that each time, like when New York, or any region really start to expand and explode, you will get to discover what Wisconsin's capable of, or what New York is capable of, and it's going to be so diverse and all over the map, but it'll be theirs, right? And it won't be distinguishable entirely because it's Wisconsin and this is what Wisconsin tastes like.
Yeah.
It'll be distinguished because they're from Wisconsin and they're, maybe not sourcing MGP or something.
Right.
But I think the new category is American single malt. That's where everything's
Yep.
about to change. Partially because we're about to get our own designation, and partially because getting new barrels is getting harder and harder and harder and harder right now. But that also means that getting used barrels, because of the production output is expanding, is getting easier and easier. And so new American single malt is now going to be able to use used barrels. That's going to open up a whole new avenue for craft distillers who've never really considered it before. And so I think we're going to see an explosion in American malt, or at least I hope we are. But I don't think it'll be regional flavor accents. Now, here is what I do think about craft is hitting the same thing music industry did in the 90s and aughts, aught two and aught, which is the era of the worldwide rock star in music is mostly done. If you look in the 60s and 70s, there were a shit ton of rock stars and huge names, worldwide household. Now, there's a handful at a time that you can guarantee pretty much everyone has heard, right? Maybe it's Coldplay or maybe it's Imagine Dragons, and some of them, I'm not counting the throwbacks who are still here, like U2 and Springsteen or like
Right.
Aerosmith, like they're still here, right? But new ones, it's mainly because our attention is so fractured, and so I think craft is going to suffer from the same thing. Are we going to find a craft distillery beat Jim Beam at its own game? Probably not.
Yep.
But will we see a craft distillery become a household name? Yeah, absolutely. Never supplanting, but that's going to be like this tiny little infinitesimal. But with the other 99% of the craft distilleries are going to be kings of their territory, right? And so I used to teach about independent music or give talks in colleges to the music departments. And I would always say, if you got into this to be rich or famous, there are easier ways to get rich and easier ways to get famous. However, if you got into this to play music for a living, you've never lived at a better time. You just have to give up being rich or being famous.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you want to open a craft distillery, never been a better time than now. If you want to open a craft distillery to get rich and famous, bad move.
Yeah.
But if you want to do that for a living instead of being an accountant, you've never lived at a better time.
Yeah.
You have to be cool with used cars and maybe not owning your home and eating at normal restaurants.
Yeah.
and not buying a private island or something. But that's fine. You can do that. Okay, the next one is a weird one for me because you often disparage your roots when you realize that there's more complexity to the world. And so you're like, oh, now that I know, it looks like the Black Ops helicopters are headed my way. Now that I know this whole world of whiskey, Jameson is bullshit. And I don't like that. I did it. I still sometimes do it. I don't like that a part of my personality. But I left Irish whiskey when I fell into peaty Scotch and all these other things. I sort of was like, Irish is fine, but the real whiskeys. And then I stumbled on the Green Spot. Yeah.
Big fan of this.
And I went, holy shit, what is this? And how have I never heard of it before? And it reminded me what a magical category Irish whiskey is. And it began my journey back into falling back in love with Jameson and Bushmills and Powers and all the budgets, and then remembering Redbreast and like, it was this whole gateway. And now it's still one of my loves. We have a joke. Cheers to you, sir.
Cheers.
We have a joke in our community, which is in our graduated somms. They all break up into team bourbon or team scotch. And then they all have fake wars in the Facebook comments about who's more legitimate. And there's a small contingent of Team Rye who everyone sort of just laughs at.
Right.
One. Yeah. And then somebody in our group was like, well, I'm starting Team Irish. And everyone was like, well, I want to be on that team too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, everyone was fine with being Team Scotch,
Yeah,
but I'm also Team
Team
Irish. Yeah.
No,
So
I mean
basically,
that would be me.
everyone
Like,
is Team Irish. Yeah.
you can't. Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, there. Look, everybody says, my favorite whiskey is the one that's in my hand at the moment. So like that.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, yeah, the spots you cannot fucking go wrong. I mean, like everything is just the greens are amazing. The red is
Yeah.
the gold is good. The blue is fabulous, but everybody's charging way too much damn money for that, and I
Yeah.
don't know what the hell
I
we're.
think the coolest thing for me about the spots was that was also an education for me, and that age statements don't mean what I think they mean, because this was earlier on, and it was like, whoa, if the green spot's good, the yellow 12 must be better.
Right.
And then I tried the yellow 12 and I was like, no, I like the green spot better. And then that started down a whole other path of like, oh, hang on, why do I like the younger Irish? And yeah, guys, I think it has a little more drama for me.
Yeah, and that
And
I mean, the Redbreast 12 cast strength is my number 2 whiskey of all time. Like, I know
what's your number one?
Barry Crockett. So the Middleton Barry Crockett.
Oh,
That
all right.
that is, and it's just it holds a special place in my heart, and it's just one of those things, and I just
Man.
those two, but like the 12 cast strength, you just cannot go wrong. Like that is. And like you guys even had that on Saturday's episode. Like it was,
Yes, we did.
It honestly is just, it's probably the pinnacle of Irish whiskey. You just can price point, taste, the proof is that like there's no negative to it. Like you can't complain. Like you can't be like, oh, it's great, but it's $300. No, it's.
Right.
$89. Yeah, it's like, or 100. I've seen it for 120, but like it's in that price point, and be like, oh, it's great, but it's low. No, it's cast strength, and then it's you just can't.
So here's a question for you.
Sure.
We always have this argument at the distillery about whether you should release something at cask and let the consumer choose to find the place they like it at, or whether you're living a pipe dream and you should find where it's most magical and proof it to that, and then let the most people experience the best version of it. And my first instinct was always let the people choose, give them what you got from the barrel, and then they choose their poison. But what I've realized mostly with myself, and then I've seen it happen with other people, is I'm lazy. And even as someone who teaches and knows this for a living, and I'm constantly analyzing whiskey, if I pour a whiskey 8 out of 10 times, I'm just going to drink it. Yeah. And there might be a special spot where it's the perfect proof. But man, when I'm just hanging out with my friends and we're smoking cigars, like I'm not going to sit there doing incremental water pours until I find the perfect proportion. I'm just going to pour the whiskey and drink it. And so that's moved me towards the direction of, if I'm going to release something, let's really find where I think it's best and then release it, even if some people might have preferred cask strength. Where do you land on that?
I think if the distiller or the blender says this is what is the perfect whiskey, then who am I to take them and be like, no, it should be cask strength? Like,
well, and then you can judge it fairly on like, well, I don't like this one.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
You put what you feel is your best foot forward, and I'm not a fan. Yeah. There's a chance you might have, when they were doing it, you might have liked a different version.
Yeah.
But man, that's so subjective, and you got to just kind of deliver what you think is your best.
Agree. And again, you could release a cask strength as well, and then be like, oh, this is too burny for me, and then you add water, and then it changes everything, and then you're like, oh, I hate this even more, and then you dump it, and you're like, well, so like, I'd just rather be like, this is my shot. I took it, and this is it. So
me too.
I don't think it's lazy. I think it's just that's what I like, and like that's, and you have a little bit more of clout and gravitas behind you, as being like, this is what I like and this is what others should like, than I do, because you are
Jesus, I'm a whiskey maven.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we didn't even get to question 4, but like this is so I guess question 4, you guys have a good time on the show. So much that I think some of the times you're fucking with the viewer a little bit. But you guys have actually taught a lot of people how to taste and smell and enjoy whiskey at a tasting. So,
Yep.
for example, the smelling of the elbow, which
Yeah.
I really thought was, you just really wanted videos of people smelling their elbow. Like it was just more of, we're just fucking with you. But like keeping the mouth open. What is like the first thing that you do when you're sitting down for a tasting, and not tasting for the show, but like you're actually going to go enjoy a tasting?
Okay,
What
so
is
say
your
like I
ritual?
did the barrel sample tour recently at Lafroig. Where like we all sit down, there's like 8 of us, and they have 3 barrels, and they're gonna give us the whole spiel and pour us barrel samples. I do exactly what we do on the channel. I live mostly in the nose. Palate is secondary for me, and I'm gonna drink a lot less than I'm gonna smell, and I'm gonna constantly be drinking water, and I'm constantly gonna be trying to reset. And if I can, I'm going to hold back some from one. They don't always let you do that, but I'm going to hold back some so I can try to get some A/B comparisons so that I can bounce it up against what just happened versus what happened next, So when they pour me a bourbon cask and then they pour a sherry cask, that I can bounce between them to compare. They don't really let you do that in most barrel house tastings. They want you to like move on and they only give you one glass. But I'll tell you, the example of it is when we left the Lafroig barrel tasting, they gave us they're going to do 4 barrels, and they gave us 4 little vials, so like if we didn't drink it, save it. And I left with all 4 of my vials mostly full because what I was most interested in was that minute exploration of that thing.
Sure.
Not like let's down a bunch of cask strength whiskey. That's what I tend to do.
And I think that's what a lot of people actually end up doing. A lot is they go to a tasting to get hammered when it's more about, I think, the other sensory of smelling. And I'm the same. I don't really drink a lot during a tasting. I'm a lot of smelling, and I've gotten the habit of rubbing it on the hands a lot and smelling.
Oh, I love that trick.
Yeah, like that is
there's things that I wish I could reset my hands, like remove the oils from the last one so I can start fresh. But there's no way to do that without adding a new smell.
Right. Yeah. Like you're always like,
yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Little Saturday Night Live. All right. Well, that's question 4. So 4 drinks down, almost midnight. Not even close, really, but
So Bunnahabhain 12, I love. I just fucking love it. Because on an island of people trying to fuck you up, Bunnahabhain is the one that whispers you sweet lullabies and tucks you into bed. Right? It's unpeated, mostly unpeated. And I think really the peat that's in it is like, and I don't know this to be sure because I didn't actually get to do their tour. I missed out when I was in Iowa. I think it's just residual from their peat runs, but who knows? Regardless, it doesn't present with peat. It presents sherry malt. But it has this spiciness to it that's unlike any Speyside or Highland sherry cask that I don't know where it's coming from or how it's different, but it's a truly magical creature. And I love it because it's got subtlety and nuance and hints at all of these different things without letting any one of them dominate. It's, I think, one of the more complex Islay whiskeys coming off that island.
Oh, it's so good. It smells so good. There.
May those who love us, and may those who hate us, may God turn their hearts. And if he cannot turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles so that we may know them by their limping.
Jeez.
Oh. Well, that goes down nice.
Oh, it's so good. Like that is, again, I'm not a huge peat fan, but like there's just some peat and sherry, you just cannot fucking go wrong. Like,
yeah, I wonder somebody who knows maybe is watching this, put in the comments like how much is Bunnahabhain 12 specifically peat impacted?
Yeah. All right, well, so question 5.
Yes.
I mean, fuck, we've been again loving that. Like again, I really appreciate your time. So like this is so
bring it on.
All right. So question 5 comes down to the Whiskey Wednesdays coin. You can spin it, you can flip it, you can do whatever you want, but the coin will give us the answer. Question 5. Is Rex blank?
Fuck no.
Fuck no.
Oh, I love it.
So it's just a
oh, it's a choose your own adventure answer. I love it.
It is. Like that's the whole like it's Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. That's 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered. Fuck, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
it was
man.
So great drinking with you. If you are ever in New York, please look me up. I would love to show you around, and I might come to Texas and stalk you a little bit more. So
in your territory, the first powers is on you. And on mine, the first whatever the fuck I pour is on me.
Excellent. Cheers to you, sir. Thank you again.